Kuva Liches and their Kuva weapons were added to Warframe in Update 26, The Old Blood, in 2019. Their Corpus counterparts were introduced in 2021's Update 30, Call of the Tempestari, with Sisters of Parvos and their Tenet weapons. The next expansion to this system, in the form of infested-themed adversaries, is rumoured to be previewed at Tennocon 2024, likely bringing with them a whole new set of Valence-enabled weapons. But the current process of upgrading a Valence weapon's damage bonus will be a major annoyance to players familiar with the system if nothing is done about it. This is because it in no way respects the player's time, by giving a minuscule reward for the rigmarole required to upgrade these weapons. To illustrate this point, I will give an example of maxing one Valence weapon, although a few caveats first. I will assume you have an infinite supply of Requiem mods, including Ool, so that at no point do you need to run a Requiem Fisher to get any more. I also won't simulate that Valence weapon damage bonuses are weighted to the lower end, since we don't have the actual numbers to do this accurately. Anyway, the example. You have just defeated Rovbog Sklor and claimed her 38% Toxin Kuva Nucor for yourself. You rank up the weapon and find yourself enjoying it so much that you decide you want to make it as strong as possible. You decide magnetic damage would be better and set out to get another Kuva Nucor with a magnetic progenitor. There are 19 possible Kuva weapons a Kuva Lich can spawn with, and it takes 4 runs of Cassini before Loburb Jock rises. 45% magnetic Kuva Nucor in hand. You do 3 missions on Earth, 3 missions on Mars, 3 missions on Ceres, and 3 missions on Sedna before learning the correct Requiem order. You confront Loburb Jock in the Saturn Proxima and vanquish him. Performing Valence Fusion gives you a 49.5% magnetic Kuva Nucor. With the max damage bonus only 10.5% away, you decide to go big rather than go home and max out this bad boy. You set to farming a third Kuva Nucor. This time it takes 10 runs of Cassini Saturn before Agabop Sack with their 56% magnetic Kuva Nucor rises to power. It once again takes 12 planetary missions and a Railjack confrontation to bring Agabop down and claim his weapon as your own. Performing Valence Fusion, you finally have your 60% magnetic Kuva Nucor. Congratulations. Although you do notice the first Valence Fusion was essentially pointless since the second roll was high enough to get the max value on its own, but don't worry. In terms of time, the planetary missions took you about 6 minutes each, and the Railjack missions took 15, so that gives 87 minutes per Lich, so 174 minutes, or 2 hours 54 for both. I could include the time it took for the original Kuva Nucor, but I'm not going to, since I want to point out how poorly Valence Fusion treats your time, and excluding that further proves my point. Over these 2 hours 54, you essentially gained a plus 22% damage increase. That's an average of 7.59% damage per hour of time invested. The damage increase is also only on that one weapon. That's not very good. Oh, and I actually did forget the Cassini runs to spawn the Liches, let's say 3 minutes per, so an extra 42 minutes. So actually it's 3 hours 36 total time, meaning plus 6.11% damage per hour invested. Oh, and like I said, there are 19 Kuva weapons, and also 9 Tenet weapons, and also 5 more Tenet weapons which come from farming Corpus Railjack instead. And if you want to max the Valence damage bonus on all of them, oh boy. But the good news is, you just learned about an arcane called Cascadia Flare, which gives your secondaries more damage when applying heat procs. The Nucor's high status chance and fire rate make it a good candidate. You just gotta, change the Valence damage bonus to heat. It'll only take, 1.5 hours? And if it turns out not as strong as you'd hope, only another 1.5 hours to switch it back to magnetic. Ugh. The Valence Fusion system is not in a good state. It disrespects the player's time, discourages build experimentation, and worst of all, leaves this orphan button on the actions menu. This is horrible. I hate it. Look, it's so lopsided. However, I'd like to propose a solution which fixes all 3 of these things and maybe more. Get rid of Valence Fusion. Utterly. Entirely. Well, technically not. It's still required for Railjack guns and parts, but it can be removed from Valence weapons. Now, I'm not going to say the Valence weapon should have an automatic 60% Valence bonus, because I don't think they should. Upgrading equipment is integral to Warframe, and removing the RNG percent won't actually help with the issue of the grind discouraging experimentation. Instead, the solution comes from another set of systems I'm not a huge fan of, kit guns and Zors. Now, it's not modular Valence weapons, good god, no, it's Arcanes for Valence weapons. Much like how kit guns have their Pax Arcanes or Zors have their Exodia Arcanes, I propose that Valence weapons are given Valence Arcanes. As you can see, kit guns and Zors have 2 arcane slots instead of 1. One of these arcane slots is a normal arcane slot being unlocked with an arcane adapter, but the other is automatically unlocked but only accepts the weapon type's arcane, be it Pax or Exodia. Similarly, Valence weapons should have a second Valence Arcane slot, which starts unlocked but is limited to a Valence Arcane only. There are 2 ways Valence Arcanes could work. One is hellish, disgusting, and utterly vile, whilst the other is normal and sensible. The hellish, disgusting, and utterly vile option is each Valence weapon has a Valence Arcane for each of the available progenitor damage types. No, please, no. This makes it worse. There are now 231 new arcanes. What do you mean they have 5 ranks each? I need to farm for 4,851 arcanes now, please. No, I don't want. The normal and sensible option, though, is just adding a Valence Arcane for each progenitor damage type that goes on any Valence weapon, no matter if it's a Tenet primary like the Flux Rifle, Kuva secondary like the Mighty Seer, or Tenet melee like the Grigori. Even if these arcanes had 5 ranks, that's only 147 arcanes total you need to farm to have every damage type maxed. Or, if they're only 3 rank arcanes, only 70 total arcanes for every damage type to be maxed. In terms of balance, numbers could look like this, with 60% at max rank being the ideal goal to bring things to parity with the current system. But how would you get Valence Arcanes? This is, I think, the most important part of implementing this proposed rework. After all, if the goal is to better respect the player's time, the speed of acquisition needs to go down, and by quite a lot. To accomplish this, I propose these arcanes are very accessible. There are 6 unique places I can think of where Valence Arcanes should be available at a minimum. First, when a potential adversary candidate is downed, they should have a decent chance to drop a Valence Arcane matching the progenitor bonus of the Warframe who downed them. This means even if the candidate doesn't have the weapon you want, there's still a good chance you'll be making progress on your arcane collection. Second, an adversary's minions should have a chance to drop a Valence Arcane of their master's element whenever they are secret mercied. This would be particularly nice when in squads, as minions belonging to a teammate with a different adversary would be dropping different Valence Arcanes, diversifying what you're getting a little bit. Third, the first time a correct guess is made on each node of an adversary's Requiem password, they should have a 100% chance to drop a Valence Arcane matching their progenitor element. This could be picked up by the whole squad, encouraging more adversary hunt squads, since, again, you're getting a variety of arcanes for playing these missions with others. Fourth is a new set of Requiem relics. Valence Arcanes would replace the Riven Slither and Iatan Amber Star drops in these relics. They should not replace the gold Exilus Weapon Adapter drop. That is too rare for what these should be. Or if they do, that should be a bundle of 4 or 5 of an arcane. This option is particularly important as it provides players who own every Valence weapon a way to acquire them without having to fight an adversary for a weapon they don't want or need. Fifth is for purchase from Ergo Glast's shop for corrupted holokeys, and sixth is trading Vosper with Lloyd for a Valence Arcane pack. This change would obviously have some extra consequences that need to be addressed. Starting with the bad, doesn't this waste the time of people who have already done this grind? Unfortunately, yes, but also no. Even a player with every Valence weapon at 60% cannot change the element of their weapon without spending nearly 2 hours fighting an adversary, so an upgrade to Arcanes would help them. The only people this would objectively hurt are those with every copy of every Valence weapon on every element at 60%, and I don't think many players have done that. To make things fair, players who have invested into the system should of course be reimbursed though. Firstly, players who own multiple copies of the same Valence weapon should have any extra resources invested into what are now redundant copies reimbursed. Additionally, Arcane should be awarded to players with Valence damage bonuses at certain breakpoints. For each valence weapon of an element between 25 and 29%, a matching Valence Arcane should be awarded, 2 for each between 30 and 34, and so on, up to 8 for each valence weapon with a 60% valence damage bonus. This would cause a reduction of available damage for most players, since the number of arcanes wouldn't let players immediately hit the point they were at previously, but the increase in versatility would make up for that. Doesn't this break Ergoglast's shop? Yes, and it would need a rework. Currently, he offers all 5 Tenet melee weapons for 40 corrupted holokeys each, with the elements and percents rotating daily. The reason the shop has a daily rotation is to provide varying elements and percents, but since that's no longer how valence damage would work, it can just be a static shop selling the 5 Tenet melees and each Valence Arcane. An exchange of 3 corrupted holokeys for 1 arcane seems reasonable. Won't this remove any reason to do adversary missions once you have all valence weapons? Since you don't need multiple copies of the same valence weapon anymore, you would need fewer adversary fights, but adversary fights would still be the densest source of Valence Arcanes. Farming the arcanes to sell for platinum will also provide longevity to the adversary missions, as is the case with everything that can be traded. Finally, the current system has no reason to do adversary missions once you have all valence weapons at 60% anyway, but that's such a bottomless pit of time, most people don't think about it having an end. So in truth, nothing has actually changed here. Won't this remove the option of adversary trading? Yes, and once again this avenue of earning platinum is replaced with the much more user-friendly arcane trading, which doesn't require a special room in the dojo to do. Adversary ephemeras being made tradable would also restore full functionality to this niche. There are also some extra good consequences of moving over to a Valence Arcane system. A bonus positive change from removing Valence Fusion is the possibility of doing a fusion in the wrong order. Because all valence weapons need 5 forma to hit max rank, a potential accidental resource loss is gone. More valence damage types. The only reason viral, corrosive, and other such damage types don't appear as valence damage bonuses in the current system is they'd have to match the 60% value to prevent Valence Fusion from breaking. This would lead to no other damage types being relevant and a hard meta forming. The fact that DE didn't add these is a good idea under the current restrictions, but since each damage type would have its own arcane, it can also have its own maximum value. Not only would this allow for the whole selection of damage types to be available as valence damage bonuses, but weaker ones can be buffed, not only with additional damage, but bonus effects. What's more, mixed damage type Valence Arcanes could exist, such as 20% corrosive and 20% puncture, or any other combo, although these shouldn't be part of the base system, and I'm only mentioning them to show how things are much more flexible when switching to Valence Arcanes. I do hope that this video comes across as constructive and not lecturing, whilst it probably is big-headed to even think that my suggestion should be seriously considered by a professional team of people who have been working on Warframe for years. I do genuinely believe something needs to be done about valence weapons to make them treat the player and their time with respect. DE have been good about reducing egregious grinds in the past, with railjack costs being decreased, frames being available from the circuit with guaranteed drops, and Fortuna debt bond requirements being reduced, so I can only hope they'll apply the same care to valence weapons. Other than that, thank you for watching or listening. Have a cool rest of your day.